Hello, my name is Karon and my persuasive speech will be on the impact of racial profiling. Racial profiling negatively impacts numerous aspects of life, but the two specific aspects of my speech will focus on are how law enforcement uses race as a deciding factor when making stops, arrests, etc., and predatory lending among loan agencies and their investors. Ultimately, racial profiling negatively impacts relationships between law enforcement and their communities and economics. The primary source of information that I got my information for my speech is the American Civil Liberties Union as my primary source of info, also known as the ACLU. How law enforcement negatively impacts relationships with the community. Communities rely on the police to protect and promote fairness and justice in our communities. When law enforcement racial profiles citizens, it causes fear and casts entire communities as suspects. In addition, it causes communities to lose their trust in their law enforcement and eventually turn their fear into resentment. University of Toledo law professor David Harris' discrimination argument rests on the assertion that African Americans commit a disproportionate share of certain crimes in the United States, and thus it only makes sense to focus on law enforcement efforts on members of that group. The Maryland State Police spokesman has said, "This is not racial profiling. This is the unfortunate byproduct of sound police policies." Racial profiling is patently illegal, violating the United States Constitution's core promises of equal protection under the law to all and freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Maryland State Police spokesman's statement does not comply with the United States Constitution's core promises. So he blamed that it's solid byproduct and sound police policies. But under the United States Constitution, all are free from unreasonable searches and seizures, and race is not a reasonable deciding factor for a search and seizure. This graph shows that police are twice as likely to use force against people of color. Not only does this graph prove that since law enforcement use race to make stops, but also it uses race as a deciding factor when to use force. 5% of Black, Hispanic, and other people of color have experienced the threat or use of force when they were most recently approached by the police. This graph is presented by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. How racial profiling negatively impacts economics. Through predatory lending. Financial institutions target minority communities with toxic loan products. Example, Atkins versus Stanley. The plaintiffs in this case are African American residents who reside in Detroit, Michigan, who have been harmed by Morgan Stanley's practice of purchasing and financing predatory home mortgage loans to be included in the mortgage-backed security. Their objection to why they did not think this was considered racial profiling or against any laws was that Morgan Stanley's defense in this case was that a loan originator is not required to present the consumer with a comparable alternative loan without points and fees if the loan originator believes the consumer is unlikely to qualify for that loan. Everything that's in this objection is circumstantial, and basically by the words using believe and unlikely, they're using racial profiling and someone's race as a deciding factor in this case. My visual aid is about predatory lending, and it shows that a white man opened the door for a family of color for payday loans only at 400% APR. APR stands for annual percentage rate, and basically this man is taking advantage of this low-income family by jacking up the annual percentage rate to 400%. This is an example of predatory lending. In conclusion, racial profiling not only negatively impacts the relationship between law enforcement and their communities, but also economics through predatory lending. That concludes my presentation.